Today I'm going to talk to you about something you've probably never come across YouTube Zimbabwe ever. When people talk of investment opportunities and projects in Zimbabwe, particularly targeted at our diaspora community, most YouTube channels focus on property development, mining, cattle, goats, poultry. When they talk about agriculture, the focus is on vegetables like tomatoes, cabbages, and also stuff like tobacco, which all offer some fantastic opportunities with a fairly quick turnaround. Allow me to introduce you to the world of coffee investment opportunities in Zimbabwe. Welcome to the Diary of the Coffee Hunter. Follow me as I explore the world of coffee and whatever else is in it. If you haven't already done so, why not subscribe to the channel? Like and comment on the videos. Above all, spill the beans by sharing the content. Remember, everything in this world is either coffee or not coffee. The reason why coffee investment opportunities in Zimbabwe is a no-brainer really is because the global rising specialty coffee demand and Zimbabwe's own unique growing conditions that are found in the Eastern Highlands, and of course the diaspora's capital, which is either underutilized or even misutilized. First of all, Zimbabwe produces some of the finest Arabica coffee in the world, and it does have the conditions for even more complex varietals, but it has lacked investment over the years, particularly in more resilient farming methods. Coffee growing itself can be traced back as far as the pioneer column, 1890s, but it was first grown commercially in Zimbabwe, in then Rhodesia, in the 1950s, that's colonial Zimbabwe. But it grew into economic significance after Ian Smith had declared independence from Great Britain in 1964. What followed the UDI, or the Unilateral Declaration of Independence, in November of 1964 is that Great Britain went ahead and imposed sanctions on Ian Smith's government on Rhodesia. And what those sanctions did, they squeezed the export markets for the things that were traditionally known to come from the country. Top of that was tobacco. As a strategy and in response, Ian Smith's government sought to diversify. And one of the things that they identified as something that would join tobacco in doing the heavy lifting on the agricultural front was coffee. So the government rolled out this fully funded resettlement schemes for white people in the Eastern Highlands for white farmers to grow coffee. And as luck would have it, a severe frost in Brazil, which by the way is the largest producer of Arabica coffee in the world, meant that there was a huge shortage globally. And this happened in 1975. And with the shortage came a significant spike in prices, which benefited the then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. By 1980, and in the transition from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe, coffee accounted for over 2% of the country's GDP. And it was by then the leading agricultural export. If we are to extrapolate that 2+ percent of GDP to the current figures, GDP figures, we would be looking at an industry at green coffee level of about $1 billion before value addition. As a product, coffee was first introduced to the Black population 2 years after independence in 1982 in the Honde Valley area. One of the first Black farmers to grow coffee in Honde Valley is a gentleman called Samatimbe, and is still very active. And he also happens to be one of Changamiri Coffee's partner farmers. That man is incredibly knowledgeable about coffee. I'll probably do, on my next farm visit, I'll do a full video dedicated to him, just talking to him and the history of Zimbabwean coffee. But by 1990, Zimbabwe was touching close to 15,000 metric tons of coffee in production. However, by the end of the 2000s, following the land reform, coffee production had tanked to just a couple, maybe 300 tons being produced. because Zimbabwe had over 140 commercial farmers, of which after the land reform, we then had just a couple left, and then together with a couple other estates owned by large corporations. One of the corporations then years later abandoned coffee altogether to opt for macadamia. But I understand they are making a comeback into coffee, which is a good thing for Zimbabwe. So coffee is currently being grown in the Eastern Highlands, what we call the coffee belt, which runs from Honde Valley in the north through Vumba near Mutare to Chipinge in the south and Chimani Mani. It is perhaps worth also pointing out that before the land reform, coffee was being grown as far out as Mangura in Mashonaland West. And I think Zimbabwe also has the conditions to grow the other varietal, which is Robusta, which is not dependent on altitude, and that can be grown across the country. So the potential for Zimbabwean coffee is huge. But before I go into the opportunities available right now, I want you to hold on to this thought, a bit of math. 1 kg of green coffee currently costs between $7 to $10. That same kg will make at least 50 cappuccinos or at least 100 lattes, which can sell anything above $3. So that's between at least 150 for cappuccinos dollars or $300 for lattes coming out of a kilogram of coffee that will have cost less than $10. I want you to hold on to that thought because we are going to come back to it, and it presents some of the opportunities that I am going to be talking about today. And like I said, globally, demand for specialty coffee has been growing and is projected to continue growing at over 10% annually. The one thing to appreciate first, though, is that the sector has also lagged investment for a very long time, much like any other sector of Zimbabwe. It has also its own unique challenges, not least climate change induced cyclones. I'm sure all of us are aware of Cyclone Idai, which is the most talked about, that hit that part of Zimbabwe back in March of 2019. So, what are the 5 opportunities that are available right now? Most of the opportunities, or the big opportunities, are in value addition. So, the number 1 opportunity is in coffee roasting and packaging. Of course, there is an element of skill which can be learned quite easily in roasting coffee. But one of the things that people don't realize is that between the coffee leaving the farm as green coffee and it getting to your cup is merely a 15-minute roasting process, just 15 minutes of putting the beans through a 200-degree drum. So you can set up a roastery at a fairly low cost, and you will be able to be turning the green coffee that I talked about that costs less than $10 into something quite significant in a cycle of 15 minutes. Roasting is perhaps the first obvious opportunity that is available when it comes to the coffee value chain, because most of the value effectively is added within that 15-minute roasting process. If you look around the shops, if you go into like local supermarkets, you will find 250 gram bag costing anything between $5 and $10. So if you take that as your guide, you are buying coffee at say $10, green coffee at $10, and then you are roasting it and you are selling 4 bags out of that kilo. Of course, it does lose a bit of weight through the roasting process, but for mathematics purposes, we'll just use the 1 kilogram in and 1 kilogram out. So you are going to be having a kilogram that you're going to be selling in 4 bags of 250 grams, each for anything between $5 and $10. So even if you use the $5 mark, the coffee that you've bought for $10, roasted, packaged, you are doubling your price after that 15-minute roasting process. So there is a huge opportunity. again, we will talk about the cappuccinos and the lattes a little bit later because they have the cost involved, but you get the gist. You get the gist of the opportunity that is there once coffee has been roasted. And also, you can either set up a roaster in Zimbabwe or wherever you are located. You can then have these backward linkages to farmers who will supply and grow production as you also grow your business. The homebrew market has been growing phenomenally, especially since COVID. People are investing in homebrew coffee machines and equipment more than ever before. They are also looking for new coffee origins to try at home. So it is a huge and growing market that you can just be a part of quite quickly. One thing that hasn't happened with Zimbabwean coffee is branding the origin. Um, there is currently no strong national brand. That's despite the quality. I will give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you just read anything around Blue Mountain Coffee in Jamaica, for example, this is coffee that has a patent based on the origin of that particular coffee. So it comes from the Blue Mountains in Jamaica, and no one can lay claim to produce that same type of coffee anywhere. No one is allowed to call their coffee Blue Mountain, and it is one of the most expensive coffee. That bit I was talking about of $10 a kg, if you want Blue Mountain, be prepared to pay probably over $100 for a kilogram of a Blue Mountain coffee. But that's because what they've managed to do is to patent the origin of that particular coffee. And also, this is what is called geographical indications, where you've managed to identify that the characteristics of the conditions where this coffee is coming from cannot be replicated anywhere else. If you go to Ethiopia, they've got Yiga Shefe, for example, but Zimbabwe has not been branded, even without the patenting, without the patents and stuff like that. One could have a Zimbabwean coffee brand in New York, in London, in Tokyo, in Melbourne, and the coffee world likes to try and to be associated with these unique single origin brands wherever they are coming from. So you can even then go in, after it's been roasted, you can do toll roasting. There are companies in the developed world that do white label roasting. So you can offer subscription boxes to the homebrew market. You could even open a branded cafe, a Zimbabwe house coffee, or you can do pop-up coffee bars. So that's investment opportunity number two, if you choose to do it without necessarily going back to Zimbabwe to be on the ground. You can invest wherever you are into coffee, into branded Zimbabwe coffee wherever you are. The third opportunity, which we are currently involved in ourselves, is coffee tourism, and sort of like this whole eco experience phenomenon that has really grown over the last few years as people have become more and more environmentally aware. So the Eastern Highlands are some of the most beautiful and globally recognized tourist destination. You have a world that is already aware of the Eastern Highlands as a tourist destination. So what is the opportunity really in coffee tourism is simply weaving in the coffee safari element to it. Like I said, which is something that we are currently heavily involved in, where we take people on farm tours, and then you get to experience the journey of the bean. And these are very popular. If you go to Ethiopia, they've absolutely mastered this whole coffee tourism thing. And also Mexico, the farmers are earning significant amounts of money out of coffee tourism, but not necessarily doing the tours yourself. You can invest in lodges. You can have sort of like Airbnb coffee stays where people will come. They'll be staying there in the evenings. You've got these coffee parties, which are now a thing. And you can have sort of like cultural stuff going on, artisanal food, and coffee tastings. So coffee tourism and eco experiences are an opportunity that can be looked into. And then away from the field, if you're one of those that would rather be, not have their hands dirty, there's finance, microfinance. It's perhaps one of the most stable places to actually put your money, because so the cycle of coffee, a tree from seed to first harvest is 3 years, which is something that normally scares people away from investing in, because they would rather put something that then gives a produce and be sold in the same year, harvested in the same year and be sold. But with coffee, the first 3 years are the road to first harvest. But after 3 years, you are now going to be having 5 years of harvesting. Of course, there are costs related to maintaining the tree in those 5 years at peak. Some trees will last for longer. Some people keep their trees for longer. But for you to be at peak, its optimum production is from year 3 all the way to about year 7, year 8, and then the production begins to die down and you have to replace it. But if you've been investing every year, it means you've got trees that are always at peak at any given time, because you put one field to this year, another field next year. So you're constantly going to be having coffee that is coming into peak production every single year. So once you've gone past the first 3 years, you are pretty much done. Then every year is just going to be sort of like the same. You're no longer having to wait those 3 years. So you only need to wait the first 3 years before the first harvest. But still, if you are investing in coffee farmers, if you are a microfinance company investing in coffee farmers, they've got existing fields. So once you finance pre-harvest financing, you give the money and the harvest, your money is coming back straight away. You just need to be able to structure it properly, because coffee pays one check once the coffee has been delivered. But there are mechanisms already in Zimbabwe where farmers know that if they borrow, even before the money comes to them, it goes to pay off these people that they've borrowed money from. There is a system that is already in place. And if you're in the diaspora, why not set up a diaspora run investment fund to fund coffee production in Zimbabwe? You can finance, like I said, processing, you can finance inputs, you can finance anything, any activity, pre-harvest, you can do that. Another investment opportunity in coffee comes from development of climate smart agri-tech. Where the world is going, technology is ever more becoming relevant in every aspect of life, including agriculture, including food systems. And what we have right now is, for example, climate change is destroying yields, and traceability is also a huge thing. But with climate change, one of the biggest problems that you have is the lack of technology to give sort of like the early warning signs when it comes to hurricanes, cyclones, and these devastating weather patterns that then hit the coffee space. So if you invest in this climate smart agri-tech, you could be building apps. You could be, investing in sort of like solar dryers. You could be investing in irrigation itself, smart irrigation. And if you are out there and there's a lot of young techies in Zimbabwe, some young tech entrepreneurs in Zimbabwe who you can partner with, invest in, and they'll be able to develop these different apps that can do different things. Because coffee, the whole entire value chain, can be an opportunity depending on where you want. I mentioned 5 opportunities that you can get yourself invested within the Zimbabwe coffee value chain. There is, however, a bonus one that I'm going to give you, and that is investing in the genesis of the coffee value chain. That is investing in nurseries. You can set up a nursery in partnership with the existing farmers. They've got the skill, they've got the know-how, they've got the expertise. All you have to do is invest in the inputs that are required for them to set up the nursery on their homesteads, on their farms. And then those nursery trees will then be sold to the surrounding farmers and beyond. This is a low-hanging fruit, and you can get yourself going with that straight away. The opportunities that I've just talked about in this video are only a high level for now. So depending on the level of interest, I will do detailed takes of each and every one of them. Or possibly I will do a full webinar with specifics that include the why, the what, and the how, perhaps including the capital required for each of these opportunities, and the potential return on investment. And I may actually thinking about it now, I may actually put a downloadable guide. If that's something that you think might work, please put it in the comments. Then we'll work on something that can be downloaded off our website. And if you are perhaps interested in co-investing with what is currently going on through Changamire Coffee Company, please get in touch via our website, www.changamire.coffee, and also pick up a bag of coffee while you are there. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching this edition of the Diary of the Coffee Hunter. Hope to see you again back soon. And I think we can turn this into a series depending on the response. But I really want to talk about the investment opportunities that are present in the Zimbabwe coffee sector.